Good morning and welcome to today's session on parenting a child with blood cancer. The Leukemia Foundation wishes to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we live and work. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and warmly welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Having a child with blood cancer affects the entire family as well as those around them. As a parent, you may wonder what is reasonable to expect of an unwell child and how to balance that with the needs of other family members. Today, we will be exploring some of the emotional, practical, and unexpected aspects of childhood blood cancer in the family. So, to start today, we will hear from someone who has personal lived experience of navigating these challenges. It's with great pleasure that I welcome our first guest speaker, Alana Hodson. Alana is an early childhood teacher who lives in regional New South Wales. Her daughter Kaylee was diagnosed with ALL, acute lymphocytic leukemia, in 2019 and is now in remission. She's passionate about helping families affected by cancer and using her experience to help them get through. Alana loves spending time with her family, which includes her husband and 3 children. Today, she'll share with us some of the ways in which she managed the impact of blood cancer on her family. Thanks, Alana.
Hi, thanks, Linda. So as Linda said, my name's Alana and I have 3 beautiful children. I've got Kaylee, my 14-year-old daughter, Nate, my 11-year-old son, and Van, my 8-year-old son. Our eldest Kaylee was diagnosed in February 2019. She was a keen dancer, school lover, and just loved being a kid. We had just moved from Queensland to New South Wales, and after 2 weeks of attending a brand new school, we noticed she was becoming pale and bruising easily and complaining of sore legs. Now, this is one of those guilty moments as a parent that you just have to let go of. My husband, Ryan, a caring, loving, chill, it'll be right, Dad, took Nate and Kaylee on a bike ride to explore our new suburb, and Kaylee started complaining that her legs were hurting and were really sore. And Ryan just brushed it off and said, "You're okay." And through tears, she had to finish that bike ride. Now, nearly every cancer parent has a story like this where you never expect that your absolute worst fear is the cause of your child's pain. And we soon found out that it'll be right did not work in this situation, and Kaylee was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, B cell, and to top it off, after more testing, we found out she had a genetic marker called Icarus Plus that put her into the high-risk category. The life we knew it before the 21st of February 2019 was gone, and it would never exist again. We are and always will be the parents of a child that had cancer. So how do you tell a child who was 7 at the time that she can no longer go to school, she can't dance, she can't see those new friends that she was brave enough to make, that her long waist-length hair was going to disappear completely, and that the next 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 years of her childhood was going to be filled with physical pain, heartache, a changing body, and that she had to put her life in the hands of strangers? Well, our advice is with honesty and a side of you only need to know what you need to know. So Kaylee had to grow up pretty quickly as she was just surrounded by adults the entire time. But we chose to be honest and explain each step with her. And she felt much more in control when she knew what was coming. We didn't throw around technical terms and we didn't put any fear in.
Have we lost
For her to work towards. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Alana, I think we lost you just for a moment.
Okay. So yes, that worked for her, and it was a goal that she could work towards. We also decided to do absolutely every last thing that the doctors recommended. And that's my biggest advice to anybody is don't skip a single step. If they tell you to do mouth care 4 times a day, you do mouth care 4 times a day. And if that meant that Kaylee was mad and screamed and hated us, then so be it. We just felt that if we did whatever the doctors told us to do, that was the greatest chance of her being with us and alive at the end of it, and that we could spend the rest of her life making it up to her. So we had previously lost a baby boy when Kaylee was only 1 year old, and that resulted in a lot of hospital time for me. So unfortunately, we got used to how hospitals work. And while doctors are our absolute heroes in our eyes, and hospitals are a really safe place for us, we know that doctors are human and that hospitals are overrun. So you need to advocate for your child as much as possible. Nobody knows your child as well as you do. I picked up every single one of Kaylee's side effects before any doctor, and I brought it to their attention. We had to watch her lay in so much pain. And so losing her childhood, we decided we'd try to make it as pleasant as it could be. So my husband and I decided that we were going to laugh and dance the whole way through it. And music's pretty much in her soul now because of it, we think. And we also decided to ask for any alternative if there was a medication that she really hated. We arranged for different flavors. We got medications compounded. We changed from liquid to capsules. We even tried 3 different forms of mouth care until she found one that she approved of. So no matter how much high-dose chemo we threw at her, Kaylee could not get to remission. And the only option for us was to move to Sydney for 4 months for a life-saving stem cell transplant. And this meant leaving our 2 younger sons at home with our parents. Now, I know how lucky we are to even have that as an option, but it emotionally broke our eldest son, who was only 6 at the time. So my parents tried to stick to our routine as much as possible. And they provided the boys with so many opportunities to keep them busy and entertained. But for Nate, he'd lost his best friend, Kaylee, and he lost both of his parents in his eyes. So still to this day, we think it emotionally affected him more than it even affected Kaylee. The boys also had to watch Kaylee being spoilt, receiving gifts and attention constantly. And while we tried to counteract that, we also decided to give the boys the ability to be responsible and to learn compassion. So we took the time to explain why Kaylee was receiving so many presents, and they understood that she was actually in a lot of pain at the same time. So they never really complained about her attention. And in fact, they've grown up celebrating her wins. And while Kaylee was receiving so many material items as such, we questioned if we should limit that to prevent her from becoming spoilt. However, the fact of the matter was we didn't know how long we'd have Kaylee on this earth. And if that was going to be in toy bliss, then we were okay with it. We did end up donating a lot of the toys that she wasn't interested in as such. So she has a caring heart and learnt that, but we did need to end up weaning her off being spoiled as such for the year after. The week before Kaylee was diagnosed, I just donated my eggs to a second family. So fertility was fresh on my mind. The minute we found out she'd need a transplant, we arranged to meet with a fertility specialist to discuss all of her options. And I've since frozen my eggs for her in case she ever needs them. But this is where life would never be the same ever again comes into play. We receive a bill every month for the storage of my eggs. We still have regular appointments monitoring her growth, her hormones, puberty. We have meetings with her school to remind them that she can't get sunburnt because of radiation. We organise test provisions to account for her short-term memory. We have to encourage Kaylee to wear long sleeve swimmers when all of her friends are wearing bikinis. We get her to tutoring so that she's not affected by the years she missed at school. And we are always rushing around trying to find any last tablet in the house because she never reminds us in time that she's run out of her medication that she's on for life. And the biggest one for me is I cannot handle the idea of her being sad again. So with that in mind, we don't allow our kids on social media. I couldn't do anything to prevent Kaylee getting cancer, but I can avoid her being caused any pain from the outside world now. So we always try to look for positives in any situation. Kaylee's so close with her dad and I and trusts us completely because we spent so much time together in a traumatic situation. So try to look for positives if you can, because you always come out the other side stronger and braver and appreciating the small things. Every day you wake up is a good day, and always remember to laugh and dance.
Oh, thanks so much, Alana. There was so many really important messages in what you just shared then. I think the one that really comes through so strongly is that role of advocacy that not just parents, but perhaps grandparents or caregivers take on, because you know your child, as you said, so intimately. The doctors know the medical side of things, but you are the expert in your child. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much for really highlighting that message.
Not just during, but even the years following, you're still advocating. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks
No
so
worries.
much, Alana. We're now going to move on to our guest speakers. I'd like to introduce Natasha Sagepal and Brodie Capehorn, who will discuss some of the common issues families face, along with some suggestions on how to manage these. So, Natasha is a parent and carer counsellor at Cancer Hub, where she provides therapeutic support to parents and carers affected by cancer, whether navigating their own diagnosis or supporting a child through theirs. She's a background in child and family therapy and extensive experience in play therapy with children of all age groups, including those with neurodivergent presentations. Her work focuses on supporting families through grief, trauma, and complex medical experiences using a trauma-informed and developmentally sensitive approach. She's passionate about helping parents feel empowered and understood while caring for both themselves and their children. Brodie is the clinical practice specialist at Canteen, where her role includes supervising psychosocial clinicians, developing projects and advising on clinical practice across the organisation. She previously held the role of WA senior clinician and during this time supported both young people and their parents through their cancer experiences. Brodie is a registered creative arts therapist and has practiced in many varied organisations over the years, but is particularly dedicated to working with families of children and young people with chronic illnesses and in palliative care. She's currently completing a professional doctorate that explores therapeutic songwriting as a way of being with grief and loss. Probably highlights the music and what Alana highlighted around the music and dance as part of an important part of recovery and coping. Thank you to Brodie and Natasha. I'll hand over to the both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I'll just bring my slides out. Are you able to see it?
Perfect.
We're just going to start by sharing Canteen's acknowledgement of country. So Canteen acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of this land. And we pay respect to elders past, present and future. I'm joining from the West Coast today, where the traditional custodians are the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We're committed to providing inclusive and appropriate support for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people, their kin and community. And I'm going to just hand to Natasha, who's going to take us through the first part of the presentation.
Thank you for that, Brodie. So today we are going to be diving into all things parenting, parenting through childhood cancer. We'll be exploring some common themes that have emerged with our work with families over the years. And this includes communication, especially how to approach big, tricky conversations, supporting child's emotional world, including those challenging behaviors that show up staying connected as a family, even in the middle of all the chaos and change that happens. And most importantly, we'll also cover a bit of what this experience can feel like from the child's and the adolescent's perspective. Our aim today is not to give you a list of do's and don'ts, though, but to offer some insight and tools and reflections that you can take with you and adapt to your own unique family journey, if that makes sense. So let's get into, but before that, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer on you are the expert in your family. I'd like to acknowledge that, when it comes to your family, we can offer suggestions, ideas, and share what we've learned from working with young people over the years. But like Alana said, that you know your kids best, you know your family dynamic and unit best. And every family is very unique, and what we might speak here might be in a very generalized context, but you can use those to apply to your family as well. All right, parenting. Parenting is hard because it is hard. It feels hard because it is very hard. And we use this term parent, we're referring to anyone and everyone who takes care of or is caring for a child through illness when we talk about parents. We understand that the family systems are so complex, and sometimes the person filling the parent role may not be the biological parent. This includes the kinship systems and the guardianship situations, where caregiving role can be shared in many different ways. Parenting, adulting, and navigating life is already incredibly challenging, and it becomes even more difficult when a significant illness is added to the mix. Parenting feels hard because, frankly, it is hard. From the moment people become parents, they're bombarded with different right ways of doing things, ways that are often contradict to one another and come with very heavy value judgments. As a result, it's no wonder that many parents feel and have thoughts of, I'm not good enough. I'm not a good enough parent. And they can feel overwhelmed by guilt over decisions they've made. Self-compassion can be really, really difficult for anyone, but it's often more difficult, especially challenging for parents. Sometimes just taking a moment to pause and remind ourselves with a simple mantra like, I'm a good parent. Because most things parents do are in the best interest of their kids. Why wouldn't they do anything with any other intentions? And we see that. Most parents struggle to see that themselves, though. So yeah, we can help shift us from our reactive to responsive mindset by shifting that focus to, I am good enough parent. It allows us to respond to our child's needs from a place of compassion rather than stress. All right. I want to take a moment to talk about values. As we shift the discussion more towards the communication skills and conversations with kids and connection with kids, I'd like to invite you to bring your personal values front and center for yourself. As we go through this seminar, take a moment now to think about the values that resonate most with you. Values are a way of being or believing that we hold about things that we hold most important. Living our values means that we do more than profess our values. We practice them. We walk our talk. We're clear about what we believe and what we hold important, and we take care that our intentions, words, and thoughts and behaviors align with those behaviors. That's a beautiful description of values by Brené Brown. So choose 3 values that you strongly connect with, and that you want to pass down to your kids and your families. And that would also be at the forefront of your parenting styles, those values, those are the intents you're coming from. And try to think of those values. Try to think of maybe 3 values that you connect with. These may also be values that you'd like to move towards or strengthen in life. This list is obviously not exhaustive. That's in front of you. You're more than welcome to choose any values that are meaningful to you personally. So keep those values on your mind as I go forward with my presentation. All right. So connection. Connection is, think of it as a self-care of the family unit, of your whole family as a unit. Just like we as individuals have self-care routines to nurture ourselves, the family unit can have its own routines of connection. These shared moments of care and bonding are especially valuable during challenging times. When we consider what connection looks like for your family, keep your family values in mind and reflect on how you can make each other feel safe, loved. So let's talk about safety. Think of what are some ways the younger ones feel safe. Like Alana spoke about trust. She really, really trusted mom and dad completely because mom and dad made her feel so safe and accepted and loved. And so when it comes to connection, there are going to be really hard times the family will go through. And thinking of ways we can make each other feel safe and loved through those hard times. What does that look like for your family within your value system? Is it playing together? Is it dancing together? Is it cuddling up on the couch and watching a movie? Or is it just having conversations or sitting in silence and eating ice cream? And think of those ways of connections as self-care routines that we want to incorporate in our routines daily and regularly to feel connected to each other and build that trust and safety with each other. Repair is an interesting one. Repairing connections is just as important as creating them, right? It's completely natural to lose your patience, especially when you're carrying so much stress around. What's important is that you repair after those moments of stress and losing your patience or feeling angry. Because you're human beings too, as parents, and you're going through a lot of stress as human beings yourself, and then you're caring for someone who's really unwell. And it's quite age appropriate for things to come up from kids, isn't it? Where you lose your patience. So it is natural to feel upset and angry. So don't be hard on yourself on those moments, but think of how you can repair those moments, which is after that's happened, going and having the moment of connection, saying something like, I'm sorry, can we hug it out? Or talk it through by saying, I'm sorry, I got upset. I was feeling really stressed. It could even be a dance party to reset the mood. Repairs are important because they shift the children's experience from being scared or confused about what happened to feeling reassured. Knowing that despite that rupture there, despite mom being angry at me, love and connection are still there, and we will always regroup together. Those moments of repair are often what children remember the most. They'll remember that no matter what, you will always come back together. All right, we're going more into the communication side of things now, which is talking to children about cancer and death. So the first one says, use simple language, words and language that they understand. Use specific words rather than vague or generalized terms such as unwell, and be honest and open. So using simple words and factual language, for example, if you're exploring what dying means, talk in terms of visuals they have, because that's what they understand. So what are some of the visuals? When someone dies, they stop breathing because they can see the breathing, or their heart stops beating. Or if it's in context of cancer, it could be something like there are bad cells in our body that are attacking the good cells. Avoiding terms like sick and unwell, that is a general experience, because there can be a lot of misunderstanding of, oh, what if I'm sick, especially with the siblings as well. Oh, what if I get sick? Am I going to have to go to the hospital? Am I going to have to do this? And there'll be a lot of relatability there. So using clear terms and specific terms, and of course, avoid using euphemisms like passed away, using clear language to avoid confusion, because kids can often take things quite seriously or quite literally. So definitely avoiding euphemisms. Emotions. So try and express how you're feeling. Use feeling words that they're familiar with. This will let them know that they're not alone and will open a channel of communication for them to express similar emotions. So it's important to show your own feelings as well as the parent. You might say, Mommy feels scared too, but we have the best medicine and the doctors. Or Mommy feels upset too, but we are here for each other together. This helps children know that they're not alone in their emotions and that it's okay to feel how they feel. Reassure them that they are still loved and cared for through everything. Oftentimes, parents feel that if we let them know how we're feeling, they might get scared, or parents worry about how their response to your stress would be. But oftentimes, it's a moment of connection. It's a moment of we're in this together and you're not alone and I'm not alone either. Questions. It's okay to not have answers to all the questions because kids can get quite creative, isn't it? It's okay to say, that is a good question. Let's ask the doctor next time we see him. You are learning this journey with them, and it's okay to not have all the answers. If they ask something you don't know, it's okay to say, that's a good question. Let's ask the doctor next time. This helps build trust and shows them it's okay to seek help from others. And like the doctors, it builds trust in their doctors and treating team as well. It's okay. Another thing with questions, it's if you're kind of worrying about how do I approach a conversation with kids around cancer, it's okay to lead the conversation with questions often to get an understanding of how much do they know about the word cancer or death. Showing curiosity and then carrying the conversation from what they know to avoid conflicting narratives or fact checking of, oh, actually, it's this, could be a great way to approach those conversations too. Last one is keeping prepared. Uncertainty can be so scary even for adults. It would be a great practice to keep the kids aware of what's going on to come in the next couple of weeks or months in terms of treatment, procedures, appointments, with visuals, calendars, and stories. Trying to keep them prepared and informed. Let them know what the next few days will look like. Will there be a procedure? What will it feel like? What parts of your routine will be disrupted this week? For teenagers, it can also be helpful in involving them in that decision making of, oh, actually, I would really like this at this time, or making them feel that they have autonomy in that process as much as possible, of course. All right, I think we're talking about children's perspective on cancer. So this is an age-wise breakdown on what their view and needs can be for those age groups. And their understanding of cancer is very different at different developmental stages and what their needs are during that stage as well. So we've got 0 to 3, concept of illness and reacts to change in routine and parental mood. So we can see how much your mood can impact their mood. Oftentimes parents think, oh, he doesn't understand anything because he's a baby. He doesn't understand cancer, but they absolutely can feel and sense when you are stressed, when the caretaker is stressed. Children won't understand what illness is, but they will react to changes around them. They can sense shifts in environment, including changes in the caregiver's moods and behaviors. And their main needs are often comfort, consistency, and familiar caregivers. Consistent safety, love, and engagement are key to providing security. So even if it's just playing peekaboo a couple minutes a day, they want that consistency and they want to be engaged because babies are always looking around to be engaged. That's why they like sounds and bright colors and rattling objects. 4 to 6. Children in this age group understand what it means to be sick or unwell, but they can't yet tell the difference between a mild illness or a serious one. They often engage in magical thinking, where they may believe that they caused the illness or that their thoughts can directly affect the outcome. It's cool that we have magical thinking at that age. It's so creative and fun, but of course that it has its pros and cons, and it can work against you, especially when you have cancer. This can lead to feelings of guilt or powerlessness. For them, reassurance is crucial. Providing clear, factual information and using play to help them process what's happening is important for comfort and understanding. So there's a lot of need for facts there, because their magical thinking can take them everywhere. And using very simple factual words usually helps there. We've got 7 to 11 years old. Children at this stage understand basic body systems. They may fear pain or death. They often learn about these things through media, video games, or movies. They need honest, direct information because they can often tell when something is wrong, even if it's not being discussed openly. They also need a safe space to ask questions. Peer connections become increasingly important during this time. So providing opportunities for social interactions with friends or others who are going through similar stuff can be very beneficial to them, because they value a lot of social and a connection as well during that time. And we'll talk more about places where they can get that. And finally, 12 plus year olds. At this age, children develop the ability of abstract thinking and can understand more complex ideas about life and death. They may worry about their appearance, independence, and how their peers see them. This age group needs social support and autonomy, involving them in the decision-making as much as possible, and space to process emotions. They also need to feel heard and understood as they navigate through these complex feelings. This age group is also going through puberty. Oftentimes, parents ask me, why isn't he talking to me? But it may be that they might actually need space and not cuddles, even though maybe at 6 or 10, they might need cuddles, but they are growing and they are adolescents, and there's so many changes happening during that time period outside of the cancer experience. We've got next slide, which will be Brody from here.
Thanks, Natasha. I'm going to speak a little bit more about parenting adolescents through a cancer experience. But before I do, I thought it might be useful to hear directly from a young person about their experience of receiving a cancer diagnosis. I'm really hoping that this video is going to work. Do you mind? I can't see the little play button for you, Natasha. Can you?
It's not playing here. Can you see it play?
That's a shame.
You may need to go to your share function in your taskbar and optimize for video.
Oh, okay.
If not, I can just share that resource
Yeah.
at the end. That would be fine. We've got lots of these videos. I just thought it would be a nice place to start.
If you can see the optimize for video clip, that would.
Computer sound. Okay. Video file. Oh, it says video file. Optimize for video sharing. It's blocked out. I can't choose that option.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Never mind. Let's move forward, and I'll share that resource later.
Thanks.
So, adolescence is a turbulent time. There's no doubt about it. Hormones, bodies, brains are going through a process of maturing during this developmental stage, and you may even feel at times like you're parenting a different person. And in a lot of ways, you are. Research shows us that the priorities of the adolescent brain become focused on figuring out their social group, identifying their personal values, and forming of self-image. So when it comes to what or who is influencing your adolescent at this time, you can expect to take a backseat to Billie Eilish or whoever they're idolizing. Having said that, due to the incredible plasticity of brains during adolescence, it's important as parents that we still take a keen interest in what is driving some of these changes we may be noticing, that we look out for any red flags and continue to be the biggest champion of our children. This is one of the key times in our child's life for building resilience. And it's helpful to know what is normal in adolescence and when we might need to feel concerned and look for support. So what should I look out for? So I've got a list there and I'll just talk through them a little bit. So when it comes to mood, I mean, like tropes like moody teen are unhelpful, but it is true that moods fluctuate more in adolescence. It's normal for your child to feel frustrated, irritable, and emotional as they navigate a changing body and new thoughts and feelings. So couple this with any life challenges, especially something big like cancer, well, it's going to be a lot going on all at once. Connection and keeping an open channel of communication is key during this time. Strategies like chatting while playing a board game or going for a longer drive can be helpful when it comes to adolescence. Sorry, I'm using a different screen here, so I'm just going to see if I can scroll down. I can. Changes in sleep patterns. So it's really normal for an adolescent to want to stay up late and sleep in. In fact, most adolescents' body clocks prefer a bedtime of 1 a.m. and a wake time of 10 a.m. So keeping to usual schedules can be tough for all teens and their families during this period of development. However, if your adolescent is choosing to sleep all day, repeatedly missing school and/or isolating themselves from friends, it may be an indication of a bigger problem. And sleep can also, of course, be impacted by cancer treatment. So it's really important to speak to your medical team about what to expect so that you know if and when you should be concerned. When it comes to education, we all remember those awkward high school years. A lot of us probably prefer to forget them. You know, there are many reasons why an adolescent happily engaged in primary school and then they're suddenly struggling in secondary school. So getting used to having multiple teachers in different classrooms, the increased workload, all the new social rules that only very few seem to understand, it's completely exhausting. It's normal for your child to feel stressed and to sometimes express their anxiety when they get home. School refusal or an unexplained drop in grades may be an indication that there is something to be concerned about, as well as changes in mood, appetite, and sleep patterns. You might be looking for like a mix of things there. And finally, I'll just cover rebellion, defiance, and risk-taking. So, I mean, you know, they've made 100 movies about it for a reason. Adolescents will naturally start rebelling against authority and taking more risks during this stage of development. What may feel like unreasonable defiance being expressed by your child is actually part of their developing self-identity. This is a time when young people are beginning to recognize their own individual values. And as the world is in constant change too, these values are likely to be different to the ones that their parents held or hold. Starting to take more risks is also important at this stage. Might be reminding you quite a bit of the toddler years here, where you're sort of holding your breath as you watch them take all those risks on the playground, and really similar things happening in the brain again. And we want them to be taking risks at this stage. So I think like a helpful way of understanding this is if you take yourself back to when you were first learning to drive a car, and it was just so exciting to be learning this new skill and that you were going to have all this new freedom. So you just sort of, you know, threw yourself into this exciting new thing. But if you imagine yourself learning that skill, so if you imagine yourself with all of the knowledge and the worries that you have now as an adult about road rage and car accidents and increasing fuel prices, I mean, all of that would create such a fear that it would probably prevent you from even getting behind the wheel and learning to drive. So yeah, we want young people, we want adolescents to have a little bit of like lean in a little bit to risk, because it's actually helping them to throw themselves into these kind of scary new situations. And, you know, of course, the time to worry is when that risk taking is potentially causing harm to themselves or others. So how will I know if it is cancer related? The short answer is you won't, not unless you take the time to find out. So some tips for doing this is, firstly, lead with connection. Your young person is going to find it a lot easier to open up to you if they feel connected to you. So you could use favourite activities, TV shows and songs, like ideally theirs, not yours. That can be a really great place to start, just trying to get to understand what they're into at the moment. Prioritise communication. So just make the time to communicate. Meaningful conversations are far more likely to happen when you've given time and space for the words to flow. You know, while it's still a really good time to check in, squeezing chats in on the way to appointments is probably not going to help the conversation to go particularly deep. So they're good check-in times, but then you want to sort of make some more dedicated time to have those bigger conversations. Respond with curiosity. So staying open and curious. If you make assumptions about what you think is going on, you'll likely shut the conversation down before it started, or will struggle to hear what your child is actually telling you. And closed questions are likely only going to get you a yes or no answer. Worked with adolescents for a very long time, and I learned that the hard way in the early days, that always asking open questions, otherwise that conversation's not going to go very far. And showing compassion and empathy. Yes, there are some things that we parents just don't want to hear coming from our children's mouths. Things like finding out that your child is engaging in activities you don't approve of, or that they're upset at you for something when you're just doing your very best. That can really, really hurt. And it can be really helpful in these times to remind yourself that, you know, I'm the adult in the relationship and I can tend to my own feelings later and possibly seek support from another adult to do this. It's a rare and beautiful moment when our adolescent children let us in, and the best thing we can do for them is empathise, normalise their feelings and offer support. Sometimes we might also just need to accept that as the parent, we might not be the best person right now for our child to talk to. And if your adolescent is really struggling to open up to you, consider offering for them to speak with another trusted adult or a health professional about what might be going on. Thanks, Natasha. So navigating the effects of cancer and cancer treatment, we had some really, really great questions coming through regarding some of the short and long-term impacts of treatment. And, you know, as mentioned many times already today, you know, each child and their cancer experience is unique. It would absolutely be best to speak to your medical team about the specific side effects you can expect for your child. We do often hear, though, that it's not always easy to get all the information we would like this way. So before we head down the Google rabbit hole, which can be so tempting, it might be helpful to know that the Cancer Council provides a free phone service where you can speak directly with a cancer nurse to receive accurate information and support on any cancer-related concerns. From a parent support perspective, though, excuse me. Sorry about that. Firstly, on managing and supporting a child who is on steroid treatments. While we know that these treatments are crucial in the care of your child with cancer, they can also have side effects on mood and behaviours that can impact your family and relationships. So it can be really helpful to remember that while these challenging behaviours are understandable, that doesn't necessarily make them excusable. We want to set our children up with healthy communication habits, even when experiencing life's biggest challenges. So an example of how we might respond is, I understand that you're feeling really tired after your treatment, and that's probably making you feel extra frustrated with your little sister today, but it's not okay for you to yell at her. Would it help if I asked your sister to give you a little bit more space today? And then when you're ready, you can let her know that you're sorry for yelling, because that's not how we communicate in our family. Of course, that requires us to commit to the same level of reparation when we've become dysregulated ourselves, which is completely normal and not at all uncommon when we're dealing with so much stress as a parent. And, you know, this way of communicating might be new for your family, and it might take a bit of practice, and that's okay. Another question we had was on the effects of cancer and cancer treatment on hormones, and Alana spoke a little bit to this earlier. Research indicates that endocrine disorders affect up to 60% of childhood cancer survivors. Cancer brain tumours and their treatments have been associated with a higher risk of deficiencies in growth hormone, thyroid hormone, and sex hormones. Long-term follow-up and counselling is recommended for young cancer survivors and their families. Seeking care and information early on from an endocrinologist would be the best starting point, as well as looking to engage your child with a service that specialises in support for young cancer survivors. And we'll provide some information on some of these services towards the end of the presentation. So speak a little bit to the sibling experience. A recently published study conducted by Canteen's research team showed that 62% of siblings reported elevated levels of distress in response to their experience of having a sibling with a cancer diagnosis. And again, Alana spoke so beautifully from lived experience about this earlier, and really thank you for that. Normal emotional reactions a sibling may experience include fear of catching the cancer, guilty that they are healthy when their sibling is unwell, worry that their sibling may die, or even just a general sense of anxiety that they might find difficult to identify or explain. As well as feeling sad and worried, it's also common for siblings to express resentment or anger over the attention the child with cancer is receiving from their parents and other members of their community. And this, again, is a really normal response for a sibling, but they may not always be able to communicate this experience due to their emotional development, or if they feel any sense of shame having some of these thoughts and feelings. So looking out for signs such as changes in behaviour, emotional regulation, or physical symptoms such as body aches and pains, bedwetting, these can all help to identify when they may be requiring some extra support. And a few strategies for supporting siblings: provide reassurance that they are loved and important to you, encourage questions and communication of feelings, reminding often that all feelings are welcome. Keep siblings well informed in age-appropriate ways. So, you know, not knowing is often scarier and leaves room for imaginations to run wild, especially in those younger age groups. And where possible, maintain a normal routine at home, including discipline strategies. Ensure that these are consistent across all children, including the child with cancer. And finally, encourage involvement in support services. You know, a positive outcome of the previously mentioned study was the indication that approximately 60% of siblings showed significant improvement after engaging with cancer-related support services. And this can be via counselling and or just peer support activities. And Cancer Hub can help direct you to the right service for each member of your family. Again, we'll speak more about those. Another question we had was around maintaining routines. So I'm sure we've all had the experience of someone telling us how important it is for children that we maintain family routines during times of upheaval, and thought this person either doesn't have children or has never had a thing go wrong in their lives. The reality is that routines and predictability do help our children to feel safe during difficult times. It's just that it might not be the same routine they were used to before cancer came crashing into your lives. So where and how to begin? Again, best starting point is communication. You could share something along the lines of, our routine is going to look a little different for a while. Let's talk about it. You may prefer to use a word like rhythm if routine doesn't really feel right for your family. If you need to move constantly between your normal routine or rhythm and a different one when your child is in hospital, you may even want to give this other routine its own name. So just to make communication easier during these times. So you might be able to just say, we're back on the hospital routine, gang. You might even like to have it written up in an age-appropriate way, so it could be referred back to easily. And it could also be helpful to offer children a sense of autonomy when there's so much, such as treatments that are out of their control. So offering, what order would you like to do this in? Who should we ask to help with this? These can be ways of offering your children agency, and it will usually mean they're a bit more invested in helping to stick to the routines as well. And of course, there will be times when every routine has to be thrown out the window, but you can still provide predictability by naming this up too. So you might say, you know, sometimes we're going to have to go into the random routine. And what do you think you'll need during this time to feel okay? Boundaries and consistent responses to behaviour will also help children to feel safe, secure and loved during difficult times. So separating the behaviour from the person, I love you and I understand that you're going through a lot, and also that behaviour isn't okay. While it may feel easier to excuse certain behaviours of a child with cancer, responding differently to the same behaviours from their siblings is likely only going to lead to resentment and family conflict. So just a reminder again that the whole family is experiencing big changes and challenges at this time, and you all deserve the same level of compassion, respect, and care from each other, including you. So this one, we're going to talk about self-care for a little bit, which is like, oh yeah, that old chestnut. As parents, you know, we've all heard it a million times before. You can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. We all know that's absolutely untrue. You can definitely take care of others before you've taken care of yourself, but you will just completely burn yourself out doing it. And I don't think I truly got the concept of this as a parent until someone shared the airplane safety message analogy. So you might have heard this before. That after becoming a parent, I remember when I watched the flight attendant delivering the instructions and thinking about how like counterintuitive it was to fit my own oxygen mask before my child's. And for any parent who's had to fit an oxygen mask on their child while in hospital, it likely feels even less instinctual. But if we put it back in the context of an emergency on an aircraft, the reality is that if you don't fit your mask first, you will likely pass out before fitting anyone else's. Self-care is not intuitive for parents because from the time that our children are conceived, we are often needing to put their needs before our own. But if we're completely depleted of all our resources, we burn out and we can no longer do our very important job of parenting our children. This is just as important, probably even more so when we're parenting a child who's unwell. I'm going to hand it back to Natasha to speak more on the importance of self-care for parents.
Thanks, Brody. Taking care of yourself. We often hear the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's especially true here. Children, so here are some reasons that might convince you to prioritize self-care. Children are like sponges. They absorb everything. Not just our words, but our energy, our body language, our tone. You might say, I'm okay, but if we can see you and your body is saying otherwise, they will pick up on it. Kids don't always hear the words, but we know they tune those out sometimes. But they do feel how you show up. They remember the feeling that was felt during those moments. And here's something really important to remember. Most of us weren't taught how to cope with something like cancer or our kids' cancer. We didn't take a class on resilience ever. We learned by watching from people around us, from how they handle hard things. And it's the same for your children. They're learning how to move through adversity by watching you. So you're modeling your resilience and your strength to your kids through these tough times. And yes, modeling is resilient. And that's why I've written monkey see, monkey do there. As silly as it sounds, oftentimes it is true. They are picking up a lot of the stuff that we're doing subconsciously even. So yes, we learn by watching. And modeling resilience is powerful, but so is remembering that you matter too. You're not just a role model, you're a human being too, and going through something really tough. Self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. And it supports your well-being, your mental health, and your capacity to be there for your children in the way that you want to be and in the way that they need you to be as well. All right, this is about life after cancer, navigating life after treatment, the new normal. One of the most common things we hear from parents is that when treatment ends, they expect life to get back to normal, get back to how it used to be. But in reality, this stage often brings its own unique challenges. It can feel like you're falling off the support cliff. The medical team steps back, the daily hospital visits and routine ends, and suddenly parents are left holding a lot emotionally and logistically. And it oftentimes doesn't feel like the end. Many families experience ongoing emotional aftershocks. Fear of reoccurrence is very real. Parents often feel hypervigilant, exhausted, and uncertain about what's next. A big part of this stage is helping children reintegrate into school and social settings. There can be a lot of anxiety around friendships, unsolicited questions, and managing visible changes like central lines or hair loss. What we encourage parents to do is proactively partner with schools, set up meetings with the teachers, and explain, or even school counselors or well-being coordinators, and explain the child's medical needs and plan of gradual reintegration when possible. We're also suggesting preparing the children for curious peers. Simple scripts or role plays can build confidence, sitting together and going over common questions that might come up from their peers, or role playing what answers they want to go with there. And importantly, we remind parents that this adjustment takes time. It's okay for the new normal to feel different. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just a different chapter with new needs. I would like to mention here that Canteen has a very cool robot service for young people. The Canteen robot is an innovative piece of teleconference technology that enables young people to attend school from their hospital bed. We know that our robots give young cancer patients the chance to stay connected to school, friends, and family, which can help improve their coping skills and build resilience that will last them a lifetime. These robots really help kids transition back into the school system in a very slow and easy way, because they're able to chat with their friends and say hello to their friends and able to experience the classroom experience, and keeping connected through all of that through their treatment and recovery journey. Staying connected and supported. This is another shift after treatment ends is around connection and support. During treatment, families often form strong bonds with hospital staff and other families. That sense of community can be incredibly grounding. And when it suddenly disappears, it can feel very isolating. Children may also feel disconnected from their peers, particularly if they've been away from school for long periods, or if their experiences have matured them in ways their peers haven't gone through. Siblings too might struggle with reestablishing their place in the family dynamic, or with feelings that were sidelined during treatment. We encourage families to explore ongoing support through community-based places like ourselves, Canteen, Camp Courtly Red Kite, or the Leukemia Foundation, and culturally appropriate counseling services. And we gently encourage families to create new routines, as Brody spoke of, not to replicate the old normal, but to find small moments of connection, joy, and structure that helps rebuild a sense of safety and belonging. Survivorship isn't the finish line. It's a new chapter that requires just as much compassion and support as the ones before. And this is where we come in. So just want to briefly go over the Cancer Hub model. When families have access to, we provide families access with practical support through cancer navigators. Cancer navs often help you kind of find the right supports and services and help in very practical supports like financial aids or putting your application through to Centrelink or things like that, as well as counseling services for young people between 12 and 25. And we also have parenting support services, which is very much focused on parenting through the cancer experience. Cancer Hub is an alliance between Red Kite, Camp Quality, and Canteen, and we often send referrals to other organizations and each other. And so it does feel like a one-stop where you can stop in and they can the intake team navigates you through the right services out in the community or where you are located as well. And this is oftentimes where wonderful peer connection happens for young people and children and the families as well. For example, we have got Camp Quality. Camp Quality does family fun days and getaways in camps. They also do camps for siblings, where the siblings can get away and have wonderful peer connection and really bond. And we do notice them making lifelong friendships there as well. And there's also puppets that Camp Quality does, where the puppets go into schools and talk about what cancer is in a very age-appropriate and fun manner. I did attend one of the Camp Quality family fun days, and they're so full of laughter and fun. So it's a good way of connecting with your family and spending quality time when it's really, really tough to do those things. And these are completely free services. There's also Red Kite. It has wonderful clinical services as well as practical supports for families where the child, and it's usually when there is pediatric cancer involved in the family, where the child in the family is going through cancer diagnosis. They have online communities where you can connect with other families, and they have pretty cool music therapy services as well. They also have a lot of resources, such as an entire library of storybooks and podcasts for parents and kids on their website, which you can have a look at as well. And lastly, Red Kite has this very cool resource. It's called Kite Crew, which is a free app where you can coordinate a crew of helpers to take care of day-to-day tasks that can be left behind when the family is caring for a child with cancer. And that really helps bringing in your family and relatives and neighbors, and the community really does show up in interesting ways, which is so feels very, very loving and compassionate. And we've got Canteen. Canteen has a lot of interesting services for young people, whether it's for their own diagnosis or of a family member. It's a cornerstone for programs. We do a lot of programs that are designed to help young people connect with each other to build meaningful peer support networks. We often hear beautiful stories of friendships that begin in a program and continue for life. It's a space where young people don't have to explain themselves. They just get each other. Canteen also supports young people through our educational and career services. This service helps young people through education or work dilemmas, both during and after cancer treatment, whether it's helping navigating a return to school or applying for university or exploring career paths. Our consultants are there to walk alongside them. We also have Canteen Connect, which is pretty cool, a fantastic online platform for young people aged 12 to 25. It's a place where they can share stories, support each other, and chat in real time. We often see incredible moments of young people showing up for one another in deeply empathetic and kind ways. Canteen Connect also has a chat to a counselor option, making it easier for young people to reach out to professional support when they need it. So how to refer? You can simply go on the Cancer Hub website and either book an intake call, or you can just call the 1800 number and chat to an intake person there. And they can guide you to all the appropriate services within the community and within Cancer Hub as well. We're on to the questions section. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Natasha, Brodie, and Alana, for some incredibly insightful information. I'm going to hand over to Jen, who's going to kick off the Q&A. We've got a couple of questions in the chat and then also some of the pre-submitted questions. Thanks, Jen.
Alyssa's put a fantastic question in the chat, and she's asked, what suggestions do you have for kids who haven't started school yet? Her son will be starting kindy this year, but won't be starting until 3rd or 4th term. And she's worried that he'll have some separation anxiety after being with her for 24/7. It's very different when you're very small and you're going into a big, big world. So, Natasha, I might start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That is really hard for us as parents to watch them go through that anxiety, as well as kind of, seeing them get out in the world out there. It's really difficult, but often what would help maybe is transitioning slowly rather than all at once. So that could look like a couple of days a week, or even doing a trial of going in with him together and making it feel like a really safe space for him, that a safe space that you trust, that feels safe for you. And that's something that kind of passes on to him, that our mommy trusts this place, and making it feel safe together, going in for trials, and transitioning slowly if it feels like it's all too much for him. And also chatting with the staff there and letting them know what to expect, and how they would navigate through something like that if he's overly dysregulated or upset. And also, Lisa, continuing to keep those moments of connection going, letting him know that you're always going to regroup and that you're always going to come together and play together and have fun together and do all the things you usually do, will make him feel quite secure about, okay, I know I am going to go back home to this safe, loving space.
Thanks, Natasha. Alana, I know Kaylee was older than that, but I'm guessing when she returned to school, there still would have been some similar issues. Do you want to share perhaps a little about how you managed that transition back?
So our biggest thing was, yes, Kaylee had started there. She'd done 2 weeks. But what her teacher did was kept her name in the school. So that's what I was thinking along the lines there. If they're not starting till the 3rd or 4th term, your teacher, and I actually am a K1-2 teacher, has the opportunity to teach the class life lessons and introduce that child before they arrive. If there's a way that you can share photos or information and who this new boy is, or just say your son, coming in, and getting his name there before he arrives. So when Kaylee went back to school, which was an entire year later, nearly every child in that school knew who she was, and she walked in like a superstar. And she left that school with long, beautiful hair, and she was a little fit dancer girl. And she came back, she'd been on steroids, she had no hair, and she had a nose tube in. So she came back in feeling welcomed and loved, and everyone wanted to know her, and they knew that they were safe around her. They weren't going to catch anything off her because we'd had the camp quality puppets in, and it was just a really great experience for every class to be able to discuss things that do come up in unfortunate children's lives. And I think the fact is, if you can work with the teacher in the school now just to get her name in there, his name and his face in there now early, and then as Natasha said, it can be a slow process, and it's a hopefully once in a lifetime thing. And if he misses a few days of school here and there because he's just not ready, then that's a small price to pay. Just as long as he's alive and healthy is the best thing.
That vision that you always have, Alana, that alive and healthy, that long goal, is the one that really grounds a lot of those decisions and those discussions and the language that you use. With the camp quality puppets, do they use those before, during, or after someone's come back? Or
it
Brodie,
was soon after she was diagnosed. It was we got them in relatively soon after, because we didn't know how long she was going to be gone for. I mean, you can obviously pick to have them there whenever, but we also had Ronald McDonald House Learning Program come and educate the teachers on how to deal with a child like Kaylee. And we did have the robot as well, but it just didn't work for our situation. She was too sick by the time we'd organised it, but there's so many things out there, so many resources.
Yeah, fantastic. Brodie, did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, the only thing I would add is I think like children's books can be really helpful in that age group, and there's a fantastic one called The Invisible String, which I always recommend to parents. So yeah, starting there, and transitional objects can be really helpful too.
We dropped off a lot of books to the school, and her class specifically got to share all of those with their students.
Oh, some fantastic suggestions. A great question and wonderful answers, really comprehensive, and lots of different options for people to explore, both with their own children and children in the class. I just want to go back to that idea of that we were talking about rebuilding a sense of safety and new routines. And it reminded me of something you said early on, Alana, that life as you knew it was gone and it would never be the same. And there's two parts to this. I'm wondering, Alana, how difficult it was to make that shift, to acknowledge that it wasn't going to be the same. It's before and after. It's not the same. How did you make that shift as a family? And can you think of any things that you did that helped you all do that?
I think that hit us most, and I think Brodie may have covered it. I think it hit us most when it was all over, and we were like,
yeah,
well, what's our life now? What we'd spent every minute of every day was, we've got to get Kaylee better, and if that means going to hospital, and we've got to make sure our boys are still emotionally okay, and we've got to try and look after ourselves. And then all of a sudden that just stops, and we didn't know what our life looked like. And it took a long time. I definitely made the most of the hospital social workers for me, and I went and tried to find another counsellor outside of that. Kaylee is just the most resilient person in the history of the world, I think, and she was just keen to get straight back into it. And then you slowly could see that Nate needed some extra love and support. But I think communicating between my husband and I, we'd have low days where I might be low, so he knew he had to step it up. And then if he ever had a low day, I always stepped it up. But it was just realizing that that is what it is, and that Kaylee's journey is her superpower to us. And if we watched her bounce back and just have this will to live and enjoy every day, we're like, that's what life is. So it just took, it unfortunately is one of those things where it did just take time, but I definitely reached out for support for myself, just to be able to communicate and talk about it and see what options were. But we're 5 years post now, and it's still just it's just a different life, and we use it as a power now. As I said, I love talking about our story because I didn't have anyone to go to. So if we can share ours and that helps someone, I've talked to multiple people through transplants and given them all our tips and tricks. It's I find communicating works for me, and my husband finds just processing it quietly. We each work through it in different ways, but it definitely was just time and reaching out for help.
Thank you. Brodie, I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit more about what support's available for perhaps siblings or children after treatment, after they've left that hospital. And it sounds like if you're in school, there's a lot of potential supports there. What about for siblings?
Yeah, so it depends on the age of the siblings. I don't know enough about Red Kite, so I might get Natasha to speak to that if she knows a bit more. But Canteen is for siblings as well, age 12 to 25. It's really exciting as well that they are now our education career support services are for everybody too. So not just not just the child with the cancer experience, it goes for siblings as well. There are ways of linking people together. So if a sibling is needing to connect with another, someone who really gets it, then we have peer support opportunities that we can kind of facilitate, I guess, or make sure that there's programs coming up based on those needs. But yeah, I think sometimes it can be assumed that, like, as the years go on, and that the sibling isn't continuing to be impacted by some of the some of their earlier experiences, but also some of the survivorship experiences. And so, yeah, having that continued support for siblings, for the entire family, is really important, ongoing. So even into those teenage years when everyone, starts going through even more changes. Yeah, and the routine has to change again because, yeah.
Yeah, and there's I'll come to you in a minute, Natasha, that it's similar theory in grief, isn't it? That children might experience a grief at 6, but then they reprocess it when they're 12 and when they're 16 and when they're 25, because they grow and evolve their understanding. And I imagine that experience of cancer is very similar. Natasha, did you have anything you wanted to add to that comment about sibling support?
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Camp Quality's got camps and getaways for specifically siblings. And it's all about the sibling experience and peer connections amongst siblings, to be the other person or to be the other child. And there's heaps of resources, books, articles on the Red Kite website as well for siblings. And also Red Kite would be able to provide counseling services to siblings as well, whether when their siblings going through the cancer experience.
Is there, Brody mentioned that Canteen you can access is at 12 to 25.
It's 12 to 25.
Same for Red Kite?
No, Red Kite would be younger kids as well.
Yeah. I'm struck by the fact, Alana, that you talked about having to move a long way away from your family. You had to restructure your whole family to access treatment for Kaylee. And one of the questions that someone had sent in was talking about this exact scenario where if you have to move to a major hospital, particularly from a regional centre, the families can be both split and a long way apart. And I just wondered if you could comment on perhaps what that experience was like from a parenting perspective, because you're obviously with half the family but not the other half. So how do you keep that connection or parent from a distance for the other children and try and keep that connection that everyone's talked about so much today?
I think we just knew that Kaylee's was high risk and we were doing it for a very serious reason. And so for us, we wanted to give every bit of our soul into getting her better and doing whatever we needed to. And if that meant leaving the boys for 4 months, then it was just a sacrifice we were going to have to make. And it's the same sort of thing with if Kaylee's mad at us, we'll spend the rest of her life making it up to her. And it was the same sort of things with the boys. We'll just make it up to them. We will. But we knew that they wanted Kaylee to get better as much as we did. I did mention my parents knew our routine, so they tried to stick to that as much as possible. I would constantly send mail to the boys, like old school mail and presents and activities for them to do when we weren't there. And Mum and Dad went over and above, taking them to new things. Like Van was only 2 at the time or 3, and he'd go to little music groups and they started doing athletics and they'd go to the beach, and that's why Van came out probably more intelligent and more loved, because he was at home with them because he wasn't at school yet, and so he just got 100% attention all the time. It just was a decision that we had to make, and we couldn't imagine trying to do it with them with us, and we didn't want to take that risk of them still being you know, in and around Ronald McDonald House or wherever, and catching any sort of germs, and then that would limit who could go and visit her and things like that. So, and a lot of it's about communication. We were constantly communicating. You know, they understood why we were there and what we were doing, and sometimes it was having to be selfless and not ringing them when we wanted to, because it was a bit of, for their age, out of sight, out of mind. And maybe we didn't do it 100% right, but Nady really struggled at school, and at one point he wasn't eating at school, and he was struggling. We did go to the school and try to advocate for him as much as we could, but it was just throwing up what was really important at the time and knowing that we could make it up. And so coincidentally, when we got home, that's when COVID hit. And so we actually got stuck in one house under the one roof, and we were forced to stay together. So when everyone else was like, let us be free, we want to go shopping and all that, we were like, lock those doors, we're staying together. And so it was like divine timing for us, I guess. So the boys had us back, and they had us back 24/7.
One extreme to the other.
Yeah.
You've mentioned all of your children there, and they've all had a very, very different experience. So if we're talking about this sort of rebuilding, it sounds like Kaylee's come out of it incredibly resilient, buoyant, strong. It sounds like your little guy got a lot of one-on-one attention that he might not have gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
We've got your gorgeous middle child here who really copped it sort of at both ends. I mean, when you look at the whole family and how you've moved across the last 6 years, how have you sort of addressed the needs of each child? Because they're all quite different, aren't they?
Very different. Kaylee literally today actually got on a plane to fly to see her uncle, and so I've been crying all morning, and I haven't coped with that, whereas she's missing.
Oh no, we've got you here.
This was a great distraction, but that's what she craves, independence and doing her own thing and wanting to be the adult and being free. And so I was trying to find a balance with that, because I have different expectations, I'm sure, between her and even the boys. I'm aware of it. But knowing that Nate needs that one-on-one and that love, and he's just my emotional sensitive boy, but I actually think he gets that from me. So I understand that side of it. And for Van, the youngest, it's Van's world, and we're just living in it, honestly. He's used to going like this to my mum, and mum would just deliver whatever food he wanted, or you know, that sort of thing. And it just, you do just have to be open and aware. But even right from the beginning, when Kaylee was diagnosed, I processed it by ringing every single person, you know, that was important to us, and I delivered the message to even his parents and his brother and things like that. Whereas Ryan did not tell a single soul. He didn't want to say those words until he had to. And so the one person he rang was his boss to tell him. And so it's just, we're all different, and we all process things in different ways. There's no right or wrong. But it was just being open to realizing what each one of us needed.
Yeah, thank you. Natasha, do you want to comment perhaps about parental needs down the track? You know, it's interesting because we focused a lot on that during treatment time, and that the risk of falling off that support cliff, you know, when you initially leave that treatment in the hospital. But, you know, Alana's here, we're 6 years down the track. There's still a lot of things that are, I guess, cancer related. It's got a long tail. It doesn't go away. What's your experience with parents down the track? Is there a point where perhaps they suddenly realise the enormity of what they've been through and need support at a point in time where perhaps everyone else thinks everything's back to normal?
Yeah, absolutely. There's that sudden hit of, oh, actually, I'm feeling really low, and I'm just processing all of this now, when things go a bit quieter than what they were. And what I've noticed with lots of parents, working with lots of parents, is they're usually in that go mode when they are dealing with the treatment in the hospital and pickups and drop-offs, and they're superhumans. That oftentimes when treatment stops or when we come home and things slow down compared to that time period, they kind of sink in or sit down with, oh, this actually happened and this is what my reality now. And I'm going to have to think if medications and all these things that parents of young children often wouldn't have to think of or would never expect to go through. So there's definitely that experience amongst parents of that shock afterwards, and that's when access is lesser to hospital staff and hospital social workers or other people in the hospital waiting rooms. And so there's a lot of isolation there. What we've also noticed is that, as wonderful our friends, family, and neighbors are, oftentimes they show up a lot and they're very present during the diagnosis just happened or when the treatment's just going on, but people do go back to their lives. And so the isolation, but we don't understand that they're actually very much in it. And so the isolation's much more afterwards, after they've come home and, everyone's gone back to work or gone back to school, but parents are still very much in it.
Thank you. We've covered such a lot of ground today, and I feel like we could keep going. There's just one other question that did crop up, and I know, Alana, this is something you've had experience with, that children are often exposed to quite confronting scenarios in hospital, either for themselves or within that friendship group. And it's not uncommon for children to be exposed to ideas of death or one of their friends dying. And Alana, I wondered what advice you have for talking to children about that difficult subject matter, because I know it's come up for you and your family.
Kaylee did ask, I wasn't actually in the car at the time, her and her dad were driving into hospital and she did just randomly, and it was incredibly randomly. They weren't talking. I think she just popped up in the middle of the song and said, "Dad, am I going to die?" And so that obviously shoved a knife right in the middle of his heart. But as I said, we tried to be open and honest, and he's like, well, that's what, he didn't answer a yes, no to it, but he did say, well, that's why we're going to hospital. That's why we're doing what the doctors tell us, because we're trying to do everything to make sure that doesn't happen. But at the same time, we needed her to know that it was serious. And so when you throw around the word cancer to a kid, it doesn't mean anything. You say cancer to an adult and we stop. Like, that's our biggest fear, So we were happy to be open and honest using that sort of language. But yes, it didn't mean much to her. We did have little friends along the way pass away, but I think because of Kaylee's age, she was still living in her world at the time when we lost one of our little friends. So she would have still only been 8. And so I don't know how well she processed that. I don't think she made the correlation between the two. So it's tricky, and there is no right or wrong way. We just used it as, well, that's why we do what we're doing.
Thank you. Brodie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just from my experience of working with adolescents is that it can be something that comes up a little bit later, and it's not uncommon for young people who have experienced cancer and had friends die from cancer to experience survivor guilt later, when those concepts are a little bit easier to understand and comprehend. And when that time comes, it's the same approach, communication, connection, and seeking some extra support and help for them, and peer connection. I think talking to others who get it, have been through it, feel the same way. That's, to me, seems to be one of the most beneficial approaches.
Yeah, great advice. Natasha, is there anything you'd like to add before we finish up?
I think I'd want to bring up the values again towards us finishing up, that always trust your instinct and your family values, because that plays a big role towards your parenting, towards your communication style, and it really drives the intent behind it all. And that's what really stays with the kids. And so always in times of doubt, when you don't know how to have a conversation or what to do next, go back to those values that you hold so close to yourself.
Thank you so very much. It was a fantastic discussion filled with lots of lived experience, wisdom, and the words that keep coming out are compassion and connection. So thank you very much. Back to Linda.
Thanks, Jen. And thank you so much, Natasha, Brodie, and Alana. I absolutely echo Jen's sentiments that I think the professional insights, but plus the lived experience really just adds a whole, 360 view of the experience. And I think the key thing that I'm really hearing today is that it takes a community to, I think there's a saying, it takes a community to raise a child. And I certainly agree that it takes a community to support and care for a child with blood cancer and a family who are experiencing this. So thank you once again. So insightful. And I've actually learnt so much today myself as a health professional. I did want to highlight before we close out today, if you have any other questions or today's discussion has raised any issues for you, please reach out to us here at the Leukemia Foundation on 1-800-620-420, and you can speak to one of our supportive care case managers. They can provide you with emotional support and also refer you to these wonderful services that Brodie and Natasha have spoke to you about today. Finally, I'd like to remind you that we have been recording today, and we actually ended up recording the whole session because the Q&A has been so robust and insightful that we really don't want people to miss out on that. So you will receive a copy of this recording in the next couple of days. It will also be available on our LF website and our YouTube channel. And one last thing, we will send you a really short survey to provide some feedback about today's session. We would really encourage you to let us know what you found really helpful, what would be helpful for future sessions. The more we know this, the more we can cater our sessions and program to meet your needs. So we encourage you to do that. On that note, thank you so much for joining us today, and go well, and see you next time.